I remind you that all jury trials are remarkable. In the words of Thomas Jefferson, I consider trial by jury to be the only means yet imagined by man by which a government can be held to the principles of its Constitution. This statement was written during the ratification of our United States Constitution. Here we are, 106 years later, as a testament to the lasting power of that document and our judicial system. 2 weeks ago, 12 gentlemen here were selected as jurors to uphold the principles of a jury trial. After careful questioning by our prosecutor, Mr. Charles H. Coomer, and our attorney for the defense, Mr. John M. Sprigg, they swore that they did not know any of the parties involved, that they did not consume alcohol to excess, that they had not formed an opinion of the defendant's guilt, and that they did not have any strong opinions against the female gender. Order, please. Jurors, you must now focus your attention on the testimony in this trial, while resisting the distraction of the crowded courtroom brought about by the novelty of a female defendant. The rest of you, who are here as spectators, are reminded to control your behavior in a manner that is appropriate for the circumstance and the setting. Bailiff Bose, please call forth the jurors.
As I identify you, please step forward. I have placed written instructions on your seats. Please be seated in the order in which you were called, beginning in the front row, starting from left, moving to right. Mr. Levi Baser, Jackson Township, Carpenter. Mr. Frank L. Schuster, Dayton, Groceryman. Mr. John Lowry, Miamisburg, Carriage Maker. Mr. Charles Hoscott, Dayton, Grocer. Joseph Shively, Madison Township, Farmer. Levi Mees, Miamisburg, Farmer. Your Honor, it seems that our jury is deficient in numbers, as only 4 of the 12 in panel are present today.
Your Honor, this trial has already been delayed once, and I am anxious to complete it in this term of court. The defense was prepared, and we were present here in this courtroom on November 22nd when the prosecution requested postponement because 2 of his key witnesses were ill and unable to attend. I agreed to a continuance then, but further delay will be most difficult for myself and for the defendant. Given these circumstances, I request that Mr. Edward J. Farrell serve as my consultant during this trial.
Very well, Mr. Sprigg. The court will continue with 8 talesmen.
Thank you.
Bailiff, from the bystanders present, select 8 jurors who can answer the aforementioned questions in the negative.
Sir. Your Honor, I reject the last judgment selected based on known treatment of his wife.
Sir, you are dismissed. Bailiff, please proceed with the selection.
Just go ahead and sit back down. Thank you. You, sir. And you, sir.
The talesmen are John Donovan, Dayton Furnace Tender, Frank Myrick, Dayton Cementer, Thomas M. Hill, Dayton, Tinner. Samuel M. Logan, Dayton, traveling agent. Moses Winger, Dayton, teamster. Jacob Staley, Dayton, saloon keeper. Patrick McGee, Dayton, farmer. August Lump, Dayton, clerk. Will the jury please rise and raise your right hand in answer to this oath? Do you solemnly swear that you shall well and truly try and true deliverance make between the state of Ohio and the prisoner at bar, Mary Knight, so help you God? You may be seated.
Gentlemen, you must remain impartial until you've heard all the testimony and the final arguments. The bailiff has provided written instruction on the charge of manslaughter and how circumstantial evidence, and how to weigh circumstantial evidence, and in your role in recommending a sentence if you render a guilty verdict. I will give you further instructions before you deliberate. Bailiff, please call forth the witnesses.
Will the witnesses please rise from your places and enter from the corridor, face the judge in the order in which I call your name. Mrs. Alois Bergender, Mr. Daniel Glazer, Sergeant Edward Haley, Mr. Thomas Mitchell, Mr. Anthony Probst, Mrs. Henry Weinsteiger, Mrs. John Wolf, Mrs. Mary Knight. Please raise your right hand and answer to this oath. You solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do.
You may have any available seat in the courtroom or wait in the corridor until you are called. Mr. Coomer, you may proceed with your opening statement.
Thank you, Your Honor. You have been asked to determine the fate of the defendant, Mary Knight, who has been indicted by the grand jury for the crime of manslaughter for the death of her aged mother, Catherine Knight. These women shared a two-room loft in the northeastern part of our city known as Bittmore Commons. Their modest dwelling on Urbana Street sits close to other houses of more substance in a neighborhood where people look after one another. Some of these neighbors emigrated from Germany and came to the United States where they found a new home in Dayton. Today, they join in seeking justice for a well-liked woman that they refer to as Grandma Hart. Mrs. Hart was a widow who survived on her husband's military meager pension. Her two hard-working sons both lost their lives in terrible railroad accidents. And their daughter lost her dignity to the vice of intemperance. The vice of alcohol caused the daughter to become dependent on the mother. This mother who raised her daughter from childhood into womanhood. And now, at a time where it would be expected that the daughter would take care of the mother. No, Mrs. Hart was asked to give more. She shared her limited resources with her daughter, but unfortunately, those paltry resources were not enough to feed the daughter's addiction to alcohol. The fact that the mother-daughter argued over money was well known by the neighbors, who heard shouting across lawns and through windows. Some witnessed physical attacks by the defendant on her own mother. And one saw Mrs. Knight assault and knock her mother senseless. So concerned were they by the daughter's violent behavior that they would often check in on the kind old lady as they described her. And their testimony will reveal the timeline on October 10th, when the defendant began drinking in the morning and was observed to be intoxicated and quarrelsome throughout the day. No one saw Mrs. Hart that day until near supper time, when a delivery man peered through the window and saw her body lying on the floor of her locked cottage. When he broke the window to open, he found the victim lying on the barren floor in a pool of her own life. During the investigation, the daughter clung to the story that the mother was attacked by another while she was at the grocery store. Through testimony, the state will prove that the defendant's version is a falsehood. The trail of blood will counter her claim. Her abusive behavior observed throughout the neighborhood will undermine the veracity of her account. Gentlemen, by the end of this trial, you will conclude that this woman did in fact kill her own mother. No one else, remember this, no one else had the motive, the means, or the opportunity. Do not let this college be filled with questions.
Gentlemen, this is the first time the court has assigned me to defend a prisoner in 20 years. How unsettling it has been for me to discover that when the defendant is a woman living in poverty with no friend to seek justice for her, the prosecution is comfortable arresting her without a warrant. Granted, the officers have the legal right to do this, but it was unconscionable of them to hold her as a prisoner in the station house for 20 days without an affidavit filed against her. This is in clear violation of the law, which requires the same within 4 days. There she sat, in jail, with no knowledge of the case being built against her, and no counsel to help her rebut the charge of manslaughter. Now, what kind of case has the prosecution built against Mary Knight? You will discover that it is constructed on a foundation of gossip and innuendo, rather than on facts found through careful investigation. No one saw Mary Knight murder her mother, and what is more, she had no reason to do this evil deed. Despite the resources of the police force and the district attorney's office, this case received little attention. They did not consider the theory of a robbery, nor did they care to investigate it. They failed to consider the reasonable circumstance of an accident. Instead, they waited for the defendant to confess. But she did not confess. Mary Knight proclaimed her innocence to her neighbors at the scene of the crime. She maintained her plea of innocence during hours of police interrogation, at the coroner's inquest, and during 2 lonely months in jail. She will tell you herself of her innocence when she testifies in this courtroom today. Lonely indeed. Divorced by her husband and separated from his children, whom she had grown to love. And now she has lost her mother. A woman who was not quite as kind as the neighbors believed, who nevertheless was beloved by her daughter, despite their differences. That daughter is not alone today. She is here with myself as counsel for her defense, and with Mr. Edward J. Farrell, who serves as my consultant and is also the administrator of her mother's estate, and most importantly, a friend to Mary Knight. She is also here with you, gentlemen. You can exercise justice today by a simple act of believing the defendant. And you should do this because it is the truth. Mary Knight is innocent.
Thank you, Mr. Sprigg. You may call your first witness, Mr. Coolbrunn.
Your Honor. I'd like to call Mr. Anthony Probst to the stand.
Mr. Anthony Probst.
Please state your name and residence.
I am Anton Probst, and I live at 721 East Monument Avenue.
What is your occupation, Mr. Probst?
I deliver feed for a milling company on Brewer Street.
Were you delivering feed in the vicinity of Whitmore Commons on October 10th of this year?
I was.
About what time?
It was 4:30 in the afternoon when I approached Mrs. Burgunder's house, which was my destination.
I see. And would you tell the court about any encounter that you had with the defendant, Miss Mary Knight, on that day?
She came from the house next door and appealed to me for aid.
What kind of aid did she need?
She asked me for nails. I thought it was a peculiar request, but she was 44 at the time.
I object, Your Honor.
Objection sustained. The jury should disregard the witness's speculation.
What happened next?
She said her mother had locked her to the house when she went to the market, and she was trying to get back in.
Did she explain why she needed the nails?
She did not.
You decided to assist her.
I felt that I should. I found both doors locked, then I peered through the dirty glass of one window and saw the bloody, motionless form of a woman.
And what did you and the defendant each do then?
She used the stick to break several panes near the bottom of the window. I noticed that the fastener cannot be reached from the bottom, so I broke higher panes with my fist. I then reached in and unfastened the latch.
Did the window open then?
No, I encountered difficulty when I tried to open the window, which is when I noticed nails close the window down. With an exercise of strength, I raised the window and crawled through so I could test the woman on the floor.
And what was her condition?
Her body was warm, but she was not breathing.
Did you move the body?
Mrs. Burgunder, who had followed me from next door, suggested I turn the body over, and I did.
And what did that reveal?
There was a bloody piece of iron across the corpse's neck. Nearby was a bloody broomstick and a stick of wood.
Bloody piece of iron across the corpse's neck. After assessing the situation, what did you do next?
I then crawled out of the window I had entered and hastened to the Valley Street Courthouse, which is where I notified police headquarters.
Is this the bloody piece of iron that you saw that day next to Mrs. Hart's body?
Yes.
What did you think it was?
I thought, and still do think, it is a stove plate that connected two lids.
See, Mrs. Hart states evidence number one. Bailiff Wells, would you please show this stove plate to the jury? And is this bloody broom handle also what you saw in Mrs. Hart's house that day?
Yeah.
And this bloody stick with nails, was this the one that you saw next to her body? Mark states evidence number 3.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Rose. And just one more question. When Mrs. Knight approached you that dreadful afternoon, how did she appear?
Her right hand was bloody. So was her face and the bosom of her dress.
Thank you, Mr. Rose. I have no more questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Sprigg, you wish to cross-examine this witness?
Thank you, Your Honor. Herr Probst, when you crawled through that broken window at Mrs. Hart's home, did the defendant follow you?
Yeah, she called through right after me.
And what did she do while you were looking at the victim and these bloody artifacts?
She knelt by the body and kept insisting that her mother was not dead.
When you left to call the police, you crawled back out that same window instead of the door. Why was that?
I did not care to disturb anything, except it was a broken window, of course.
Did you still believe Mary Hart's story that she was locked out of her house, despite the horrid scene at the cottage?
I guess I did.
And at that time, did you believe this piece of iron from a stove was a murder weapon?
No, I did not.
Let me ask you, Mr. Probst, when you first encountered Mary Knight that afternoon, did she seem nervous?
I thought she was in a half-drunken condition, excited and more or less incoherent, but not nervous,
Why did you think she was excited?
because she had been locked out of the house.
You did not believe she was excited because she had just murdered her mother?
No, I thought she wanted to cook dinner.
Because of the time of day.
Yeah, and because she was carrying a package of meat from a market.
Meat? You're sure it was meat?
Yeah,
How did you know?
there was blood, a single piece of paper onto a hand.
You saw blood on the defendant's hands from a package of raw meat?
I did.
Thank you, Mr. Probst. You may step down.
I now call Sergeant Edward Haley.
Sergeant Edward Haley.
Sergeant, where is your residence?
I live at 526 East Xenia Avenue.
On October 10th, did you receive a report from a Mr. Anthony Probst?
Yes, we received a call and Chief Farrell and I hastened out to the above.
And what did you find when you arrived at the house on Brant Pike Road?
The house was crowded with a lot of people and they were hungry for details. We needed to clear them away so we could investigate the body that had fallen about 6 feet from the kitchen door.
Is that how you found the body?
No, the body had been moved and turned over.
Oh, how do you know where the victim fell?
There was a great pool of blood that showed where the deceased had originally fallen.
This is a very important question. Was there blood in any other part of the house?
We did find bloody finger marks on the inner side, on the inner doorknob in the kitchen, underneath that knob, and on a panel that was outside the door.
Did you find a key to that door?
The key was on the inside of the kitchen door.
And how did it appear?
It was a stainless white key. It was clean. It had no blood on it.
Was that door locked?
The house was open when we arrived.
Oh, so the other door was unlocked too.
Yes,
And what did you deduce from that? Or were you able to locate the key to that door?
yes, we were. The key was lying in a spot beneath the lock of the door.
And what did you deduce from that fact?
Chief Farrell tried an experiment of taking the key and pushing it under the door of the lock which had fitted to see if it would fit. It would not. So that convinced us that no one had exited and then turned around to slip the key back under the door.
I see. Did you remove any hardware from that house?
Chief Farrell instructed me to remove the lock on the back kitchen door and the blood-stained inner knob that was attached to it.
Is this the locking knob you removed?
It is. Chief Farrell brought that to police headquarters along with the bloody stove lid, a billet of wood, and a broom handle. The two were also stained with bloody fingerprints, but we found those inside the house.
That was marked State's Evidence Number 4. Sergeant, are these other three pieces of evidence that were previously introduced at trial the same objects that you found in the Hart house that day?
They are.
When you arrived, was the defendant present in the house?
Yes, she was sitting on the floor, rocking and moaning.
Did you interview her there?
We tried, but she wouldn't leave the body. And with her crooning and her crying.
This is prejudicial testimony, Your Honor. I object.
Sustained. The witness is instructed to use less colorful language.
She was unable to talk coherently, so we took her to the police department.
I see. And what did the police chief say to the defendant at that point?
Fine.
Well, you just said that, was the cornerstone.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can't do this without these Was the coroner summoned by Chief Farrell?
Coroner Corbin did visit the house soon after the discovery, and subsequently he removed the body to Budweiser and Regan's undertaking establishment.
I see. Sergeant, I'm handing you state's evidence, part number 5. Would you be so kind as to read the remarks prepared by Coroner Corbin in these sections marked and the dates attached?
He wrote on October 11th, "This morning, Dr. Boer and Dr. Shepard, under my direction, conducted an autopsy on the body of Mrs. Hart. It was found that the force of the blow at the base of the brain had killed her by concussion."
And would you also read this section by the attending physician, Dr. Duckworth?
I affirm the facts of the autopsy on Mrs. Hart's body. A blow to the head congested the cerebellum, and the stomach showed signs of drink.
Signs of drink. Thank you, Sergeant. State's evidence number 5. Now, were you present at the house when Police Chief Farrell interviewed the defendant?
Yes, he interviewed her soon after we arrived at the police station, but she was so intoxicated he turned her over to the custody of the police matron and interviewed her later when she was sober.
And what did you expect that she would say in the second interview?
Given the abundance of evidence that was found on her body and in the house, we were sure she would confess to the killing of her mother.
Did she offer this confession?
No, she stuck to her original threadbare story.
I see. During the second interview, did the defendant explain how she entered the house?
She said that Mr. Probst broke the window. He entered the house, he unlocked the door, and she entered. She said the key was on the inside of the door.
And what did the police chief Farrell say to the defendant at this point?
He said immediately, "What do you know about the inside of that room?"
And how did she react when she heard these words?
She buried her face into her handkerchief, but when she would look up, her face was surreal again.
Did the defendant ever explain why she happened to have blood on her hands and her clothes?
At first, when she was questioned, she said she had a bloody nose. But the coroner sent a physician, and the physician found no evidence of that. When she was questioned later, she then said that she had taken a fall and cut herself on Wednesday night. And the next day, the wound was still seething.
2 different answers. Sergeant, did her testimony lead to some sort of motive for the crime?
We feel that she had an argument. We feel that she killed her mother during a drunken argument, and that's why she was arrested, charged with manslaughter, and the case eventually went to the grand jury.
And what did the police chief say to you after his second interview with the defendant?
The chief said, "She's the most hardened creature I ever saw."
Thank you, sir. Your witness.
Sergeant Haley, were the mayors still assembled at the Hart residence when you left with the defendant?
They were.
Did you speak with any of them?
She did say something incoherently. Something like, "I'm all right. I'm with Chief Farrell. You can't do me any harm."
I see. When you investigated the Hart home, did you notice if there was a missing piece of iron from the stove?
I did investigate the stove, and there was no piece missing.
Nor any piece that might be identified as a replacement?
No.
Therefore, you don't really know if this was grabbed and used in haste in a drunken rage as my warrant for manslaughter charge. Is it not possible that this was brought into the house by someone else?
would have selected that hovel as a place to commit a theft?
Your Honor,
The witness is instructed to answer the question, not to comment.
You offer a possible theory, Mr. Sprague, but the chief and I thought that it was more probable that the stove lid was never discarded after it was replaced on top of the stove by a newer piece.
did Coroner Corbett fix the blame on the defendant?
He left that to the grand jury.
I see. Perhaps he had some doubts.
Objection, Mr. Sprague is speculating.
Sustained. Save the speculation for your closing, Mr. Sprague.
How many hours did Police Chief Farrell interrogate the defendant while she was intoxicated?
About 1 hour.
And how long did he question her the next day when she was sober?
3 hours.
During all of this time, did Mary Knight confess to murdering her mother?
No, she did not. The woman is a puzzle.
Why do you make that statement?
She sticks to a flimsy story, coupling it with falsehoods and every utterance
What falsehood?
that she did not kill her mother.
Perhaps she's telling the truth.
But then she alternates between exhibitions of grief and indifference. Perhaps she is pretending to be insane.
Conjecture seems to run rampant in this trial. You may step down, Sergeant David.
I call Mrs. John Burton Wolf to the stand.
Mrs. John Burton Wolf?
Mrs. Wolf, please share with the court where you live.
I live at 92 Grant Pike.
Are you familiar with Mrs. Catherine Harper?
Yes, she lived near my house.
And do you know the defendant, her daughter?
She and her husband and his 3 children lived with Mrs. Hart for several years until a disturbance occurred in the night's food. Mrs. Knight frequently came back and visited. I saw them together in the neighborhood, and I heard them more often than that.
Oh, what do you mean by that comment, Mrs. Wolf?
They were notorious for their shouting matches, especially when drinking.
Oh, do you ever recall a time when Mrs. Knight was violent towards her mother?
Oh yes, Mrs. Knight frequently whipped the old lady. Everyone knew it. Once, Mrs. Seaman told me she saw Mrs. Knight pull a chair over her mother.
Objection, Your Honor, that is hearsay.
Objection sustained.
Thank you, Your Honor. We'll keep your observations of what you saw just for yourself. Please share with the court if you saw Mrs. Knight in the late morning or early afternoon of October 10th.
I saw her around noon that day.
Was she alone?
Yes,
And what was she doing?
she was walking towards town. I was looking for my husband. He's a stereotyper at a local printing business, and he operates a machine that creates casting molds and... Well, he was coming home from lunch, and I was looking for her when I saw her and her manner attracted my attention.
What do you mean by her manner?
She walked as though drunken.
Oh. And did you see her return from town?
No, but I saw her later that day at her house. She was sitting next to the corpse of her mother whose face was bloody. There was a gash in the neck. I saw right at a glance that Mrs. Hart was dead, but Mary kept insisting her mother was alive.
And how did you come to be at that scene?
Well, Josephine, Mrs. Burgunder, gave the alarm in the neighborhood that something had happened, and anyone who could came to see, to help. When I arrived, the house was wide open. Mrs. Drapp, Mrs. Weinsteiner, Mrs. Burgunder, Mrs. Seaman, and Mrs. Myers were all there in the house. There were no men present at the time.
What did you notice besides the neighbors at the scene?
The panes of glass on the lower sash of the window were all broken.
Anything else?
The hourglass-shaped cross piece of the stove with blood on it.
Oh, I see. Is this the bloody piece of iron that you saw?
Yes, it was on the floor next to the body.
No more questions, Mrs. Wolf. Thank you very much. That will be all.
Mrs. Wolf, you mentioned that Mrs. Knight walked in a drunken manner. What do you mean by that?
Well, she wove around as she walked down the street, moved in erratic ways.
Did she still seem intoxicated when you saw her later in the day?
She seemed under the influence by what she was saying.
So Mary Knight was incoherent and behaving in an irrational manner?
No, not exactly. She talked coherently.
Mrs. Wolf, did you observe that Mary Knight was or was not intoxicated as she sat grieving over the body of her mother?
It's hard to say because she's so often intoxicated.
You did not see her kill her mother, did you, Mrs. Wolf?
No.
And I would gamble that none of the other helpful ladies at the Hart residence saw the murder either, did they, Mrs. Wolf?
Well,
I object. Withdraw, Your Honor.
I'm finished with this witness, Your Honor.
The witness may step down.
Your Honor, although the next witness does speak a little English, her native tongue is German. I would request that Mr. Glazer interpret for this witness.
Isn't Mr. Glazer on your witness list?
Yes, he is, sir. But as a proprietor of an established business in Newport Commons, he is trusted by the witness.
Is this translator acceptable to you, Mr. Sprigg?
Yes, Your Honor. As one who has studied German, I trust that I'll be able to verify the veracity of his translations.
Well,
Very well, you may proceed, Mr. Cooper.
I call Mrs. Alois Burgunder to the stand, please.
Mrs. Alice Burgunder.
And Mr. Glazer, if you would please take place next to her. And also, if you would you speak loudly and clearly enough so that Mr. Sprigg can hear you as well?
Thank you, Constable. I hope the jury can hear.
Mrs. Berg, would you please state your residence?
In der Urbanstraße neben Frau Hart's house.
I live on Urbana Street next door to Mrs. Hart's house.
Did you hear Mrs. Hart and her daughter, the defendant, quarreling the night before Mrs. Hart was murdered?
Ich habe sie oft streiten gehört, aber in der Nacht war es besonders laut. Ich bin aufgewacht.
I heard quarreling often, but they were especially loud that night. I was awakened by the sound.
Could you determine the topic of that argument?
Ja, Frau Knight wollte eure Einnahmen für Mittwochswäsche.
Mrs. Knight was demanding all the money taken in for Wednesday's washing.
I see. Did they argue in English?
Ja, ich habe verstanden. Es gab immer Probleme ums Geld.
Yes, but I understood there were always problems with money.
Oh, could you determine how Mrs. Knight wanted to spend the money?
Ja, für Whisky.
And did Mrs. Hart also drink whiskey?
Nein, nur wenn Frau Knight da war.
No, only when Mrs. Knight was around.
Mrs. Hart was a good woman.
You testified to the coroner that Mrs. Knight asked you for a key to her house. Why did you have a key?
Korn?
They're like in the shower.
Letzten Sommer hat die Tochter ihre Mutter oft aus Haus geworfen. Frau Knight hatte mir den Schlüssel für Notfälle gegeben.
Last summer, I repeatedly saw the daughter throw the mother out of the house. Mrs. Knight, Mrs. Hart, asked me for a key in case she needed it.
Did you give her a key the day of the murder?
Ja, aber unter Protest. Es war alles sehr verdächtig.
Yes, but under protest. It was all very suspicious.
What was suspicious about that day?
Sie bat mir Nick um Nägel und sagte, dass sie ausgesperrt war. Dann sah sie mit Herrn Probst ins Haus gehen.
She asked me for some nails and said she was locked out. Then I saw her go with Mr. Probst to her house.
Did you go next door when Mr. Probst was there?
Ja, ich wollte wissen, was Frau Knight mit meinen Nägeln und den Schlüssel gemacht hatte.
Okay, yes, I wanted to see what Mrs. Knight did with my nails and the key.
And what did you see then?
Blut auf der Fensterbank und auf Frau Knights Hand. Und ich fragte, was hast du getan? Und sie sagte, nichts. Und dann
There was blood on the windowsill and on Mrs. Knight's hand. I asked her what she had been doing, and she answered, nothing. Done.
Und dann sah ich Frau Verhaag am Boden liegen. Und ich fragte, have you been having your usual good time today, Mary?
Then I saw Mrs. Harp on the floor, and I asked, have you been having your usual good time today?
I see. And how did she respond to that?
Ach, sie war besoffen und faselte Unsinn.
She was drunk and spoke insensibly.
Thank you, Mrs. Burgunder. And you too, Mr. Glazer, but your witness, Mr. Spring.
You translated very cleverly and intelligently, Mr. Thank you. I have a question for you, Frau Verwunder. Do you like Mary Knight?
Objection, that's irrelevant.
Relations between neighbors become relevant when one accuses the other of murder.
Overruled. You may ask the question, Mr. Spring.
Do you like Mary Knight?
Nein.
Please, tell the court why you dislike her.
Alle wissen, dass sie ihren Mann und Kinder verlassen hatte. Und alle paar Wochen einen anderen Mann hatte.
Okay, everyone knows that she left her husband and did not take care of his children. She was also known to live with various men, spending a few weeks with each.
Solche Leute brauchen wir hier nicht. Und always drunk.
We don't mean like someone like that here and always drunk.
Your neighborhood must be much quieter now that Mrs. Hart and her daughter are both home.
Ja, genau.
Thank you for your testimony. Mrs. Verhoeven, step down.
I request that Mr. Glazer remain as my next witness.
You may take the stand, Mr. Glazer.
Please state your name and occupation.
My name is Daniel Glazer. I keep a grocery and saloon at the corner of Grand Pike and Valley Street.
Have you had dealings with Mrs. Hartman, your store?
She has been a customer for years, but I had to cut her off because she did not pay her bill.
Did she frequently buy whiskey and drink to intoxication?
I never saw Mrs. Hart drunk in my life.
Did you ever see the defendant drunk?
Often. She was in the habit of drinking half and half.
Please share with the court any encounter you may have had with the defendant on October 10th of this year.
Mrs. Knight came in my place at 11 o'clock, and then at 3:30 o'clock she was there again.
Were any purchases made on either of those visits?
She got some meats in the morning. Both times she was chasing the growler.
So she bought whiskey in a bucket both times. Were any purchases made during that time, or on either visit?
Yes, as I said, she got some meats and was chasing the growler.
How much did she spend?
About 20 cents.
And did she have blood on her face, hands, or clothing at that time?
No, both. She was clean. She's clean faced, and I did not notice any blood on her clothes.
Did you notice any blood on her when she returned?
I did not look carefully, but she said she had fallen.
And how did she behave when she returned to your saloon at 3:30 in the afternoon?
She acted wild when she came back to the store the second time, muttering, "Mother told me, mother told me, mother told me." I told her, hurry and get out. I did not like her conduct.
When did you hear the news of Mrs. Hart's death?
Probst came in for a drink and told me then.
And what did you think when you heard that news?
I thought she murdered her mother before a second visit to the store at 3:30.
Oh, I see. Thank you, Mr. Glazer. For witness counsel.
How long have you been in business at this North Dayton location?
19 years.
Did you know Mrs. Hart and her daughter in better times?
They did not always live near my establishment, so I really can't say. But regulars to the saloon have say that Mrs. Knight was better when she lived with her husband. But others say that she was already drinking and disagreeable then.
Thank you, Mr. Glazer. You may step down.
I'd like to call Mrs. Henry Weinsteiger to the stand.
Mrs. Henry Weinsteiger.
when the death had been discovered. Is that true?
I came after word spread that something had happened.
I see. And how did you enter the house?
I came in through the front door.
It wasn't locked?
No, it was open.
Who else was there?
Laura Gold, Sophie Homburg, Josephine Burgunder, Mary Knight, and some others, and some children.
Very nice. What was she doing when you entered?
She was sitting by her dead mother's side.
Did she say anything?
She said, I didn't kill my mother. She was the best friend I had in the world.
Did she have any blood on her person?
There was blood all over her hand and her clothes.
Did the blood come from her mother?
I don't know. I heard Josephine Burgunder ask her where the blood came from, and she said she cut her hand the day before. I did not believe her, though.
I see. Well, what did you think?
I thought she had killed her mother.
Objection, speculative.
Your Honor, the witness is permitted to explain what she thought.
Overruled, but the jury is reminded not to confuse opinion with evidence.
Mrs. Weinsteiger, did you see any evidence of violent behavior of the defendant towards her mother?
One time, I saw her throw stones at her mother and smash the windows. Later, I told her she should not treat Grandma Bird that way, and she denied ever doing it.
Do you know if she'd been drinking when she threw these stones?
Yes, she had been.
Oh, well, Mrs. Weinsteiger, have you noticed if the defendant becomes forgetful when drinking? Mrs. Weinsteiger? Have you noticed if the defendant becomes forgetful when drinking?
I can't say I noticed that. Mary is a sharp-shrewd woman. I never see her lose control of her mental faculties when drunk. On the contrary, she seemed sharper than ever.
Can you tell the court what you saw when you visited the mother and daughter the Sunday before the murder?
I often visit Mrs. Hart to check on her. She a fine old lady. That Sunday in early October, I found both Mary and Mrs. Hart pretty drunk. I put Mrs. Hart to bed, and she showed me where her daughter had chopped her arm with a hatchet. Yeah.
Did you ever see Mrs. Hart behave violently toward her daughter?
I only heard her shout at Mary about spending too much money on the whiskey.
Did either woman share with you how much money that they made?
Most of the money come from Mr. Hart's military pension. Mrs. Hart instead, she tried to keep her money in an office downtown so her daughter did not get her hands on it.
You mentioned that you visited the defendant often in her home. Did she ever come to visit you?
Oh, she visited often.
And you remember that she visited you on that fateful day, October 10th, 1895.
I remember it well because she was so quarrelsome. As she wove around my kitchen, I was afraid she would fall down the cellar stairs.
Oh, around the kitchen. Well, what time was this?
It was 11:30 o'clock in the morning. I was thinking she was on her way home from the market because she had whiskey and meat with her.
Oh, well, thank you for your testimony today, Mrs. Weinsteiger. Your witness, counsel.
Madam, did you ever drink with Mary Knight, either in her home or in hers?
Sometimes, but not often.
When you did drink with Mary Knight, did she behave violently towards you?
No, she was not violent to me, just disagreeable at times.
Were you present when Sergeant Haley and Police Chief Farrell took the defendant from her home on October 10th?
I was still there.
Sergeant Haley testified that as the defendant walked away, she said, "I'm all right, I'm with Chief Farrell, and you can't do me any harm." You did hear her say that?
Yes.
sharper than ever. So, might this suggest that Mary believed you, or some of you, intended to do her harm?
I can't imagine why any of us would want to do her any harm.
Can't you, Mrs. Weinsteiger? Mrs. Burgunder just testified that she was glad to have Mary Knight out of the neighborhood.
That does not mean she would want to hurt her, though.
Agreed. Earlier in this trial, Mr. Kugler introduced this report, may I, which quoted Dr. Duckwell after he had examined the body of Mrs. Hart. I believe that there's another statement in here by Dr. Duckwell taken a few days before her death. Would you please read from here?
He wrote, I recently called at their home to attend Mrs. Knight, who Mrs. Hart said,
Please go on.
who Mrs. Hart said had been assaulted by Mrs. Weinsteiger.
Apparently, Grandma Hart thought that you intended to do her daughter harm.
Oh, no, that is not true.
You may step down, Mrs. Weinsteiger.
One moment, Your Honor. Permission to redirect.
Proceed.
Mrs. Weinsteiger, will you please read this statement by Dr. Duckwell after that earlier part that you read?
He wrote, when I arrived at their home, the patient had gone.
Oh, well, seems like it wasn't a severe injury after all. Perhaps just an accidental mishap. Thank you so much, Mrs. Weinsteiger. Let me help you. A lady of your stature deserves respect.
No, that is not true. It is not true.
The state rests against Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. You may call your first witness, Mr. Sprague.
Your Honor, may I take one brief moment to consult? Your Honor, I call Mr. Thomas Mitchell.
Mr. Thomas Mitchell.
Please state your name, your residence, and your occupation, sir.
My name is Tom Mitchell. I live at 968 Valley Street, and I'm a carpenter.
Have you recently been acquainted with the defendant?
No, but I knew her father.
Please explain the circumstances of your relationship with him.
We served together in the Union Army.
Did you keep up with him after the war?
Passed through the ordeal of battle safely enough. And we're on our way home from our regiment to be mustered at Camp Chase in Columbus. When he left his regiment to stay in Kentucky.
He left his regiment early and then deserted his wife and his children.
I didn't think it was right. I was not married at the time, and now that I am, and no more leave my beloved wife Ellen. My children are...
Objection, Your Honor. The witness seems to be more interested in testifying about himself than the circumstances of the trial.
Your Honor, the prosecution has presented several witnesses who have attacked the character of my defendant. This witness offers the court an understanding of the circumstances.
The objection is overruled. We're trying to move your witness to the point, Mr. Sprague.
I will, Your Honor. Thank you. What happened to Mr. Harker?
Well, my comrades told me that he's currently in a butcher shop in Louisville.
So he never reconciled with his wife, Catherine Harker.
Not as far as I know.
Some of the newspapers referred to her as a widow and even suggested that she lost her husband during the war.
She was a widow, but not because of the war. Hart died later.
Where did you learn that?
I heard it at a GAR meeting.
Huh. Are you active with the veterans of the Grand Army of the Republic, sir?
I attend meetings on that.
Is that where you heard about the trial?
I read about the murder in the newspaper.
Please share with us why you chose to come forward and be a witness for the defense.
I wanted the jury to know that the Hart family was above the death this awful crime suggests. The deaths of her son, the said influenced Mrs. Hart to indulge in drink before Mrs. Knight of a habit. Mrs. Knight was once a woman of clean life and habits.
Please tell us what you know of the deaths of Mary Knight's brothers.
They died while railroading the yard here in Dayton. But that's another bit the paper had wrong. They reported that Mrs. Knight's father had died in a railroad accident, but it was her brother's. Adam died first. They called him Ad. He had one of the biggest funerals ever given a railroad man in Dayton. Michael died about 2 years later.
Thank you for doing your duty, sir, and setting the record straight.
Mr. Sprague might have said thank you for doing your duty at last. Mr. Mitchell, your help might have been much more appreciated by Mrs. Hart if you had offered it before she became destitute and drunk.
I object. Mr. Googler is testifying.
Ask a question, Mr. Coolwood.
Yes, Your Honor. Do you know of any other women who have lost husbands, sons, children, and have somehow managed to pull themselves out of poverty and destitution without the use of buckets of whiskey and violent attacks on their own family members?
Yes, I believe I know others in our church who have fared better through hard work and prayer.
Oh, well, thank you for that honest conviction, Mr. Mitchell. You can sit down.
I call Mary Knight.
Spectators will listen in silence, or the bailiff will remove them from the courtroom.
Please state your name and your age.
My name is Mary Knight. I am 43 years old.
Where were you born, Mary?
I was born in North Dayton.
Please tell the court the last time you saw your mother alive.
It was on October 10. She was sitting on the step by the kitchen door when I went to the grocery.
What time of day was that?
About 3:30.
Did you stop anywhere along the way?
I stopped at Isabel Weinsteiger's house before I went to Blazing's Market.
Have you been to Mr. Glazer's establishment earlier that day?
No. I went out to see neighbors in the forenoon and then to the grocery.
What did you do before you visited with your neighbors?
We had breakfast together at 6:30, Mother and I. Then I went out.
Did you share a noontime dinner with your mother?
We have only 2 meals a day. We usually have supper between 4 and 6 o'clock.
Is that why you went to Mr. Glazer's grocery at 3:30?
Yes, I got meat from him for soup.
Did you purchase any whiskey from Mr. Glazer?
No, I only bought meat at the store.
Please tell the court what happened when you arrived at your home.
When I got back from the grocery, I found the house locked up.
Did you have any idea why it was locked?
I suppose Mother must have locked it, for safety or because she had gone out.
What did you do then?
Peering through the window, I saw my mother lying prostrate and bloody by the stove. I was afraid that something had befallen her.
Then what happened?
I saw a feed wagon going up the street, so I asked the driver for aid.
Was Mr. Anthony Probst the driver?
Yes, that was his name.
And did he give you aid?
Yes, he helped me break the window and he crawled through it to get inside.
Mary, when Mr. Probst crawled through that broken window, did you follow him as he testified?
No. He opened the door for me from the inside and admitted me. I went to the other door and saw that the key was on the inside of the door.
Witnesses for the prosecution testified that as you sat by the body of your mother, you first said she cannot be dead, and then you said later, I did not kill my mother. Now, do you remember saying those things?
Yes. I could not believe that she was dead. She had been fine when I left. How could she be dead? I thought she must have fallen after she locked the doors.
While you were kneeling there by your mother, why did you say, I did not kill her?
Because the neighbors kept saying that I didn't. I wanted them to know that I did not.
The neighbors noticed blood on your clothing. How did that blood come to be there?
I had a nosebleed the night before, so I must have wiped some of the blood on my dress.
Did you explain that fact to Police Chief Farrell?
I did, but he said he did not believe me. I also told him I had blood on my hand from a wound I received when I fell on Wednesday morning.
Was this convincing to the chief?
Did not seem to be. He told me to confess.
But you did not confess, did you, Mary? Not then, and not now.
How can I? I did not do it. For as I live, so help me God. I am as innocent as a baby newborn. Why should I have killed my mother? She was my only friend.
There is no reason for a daughter to kill a mother who loved you, Mary.
Did you buy the meat from Mr. Glazer around 11 o'clock on October 10th before you visited his saloon?
I was not near Glazer's 11 that day.
Did you purchase whiskey from Mr. Glazer on October 10th?
No, I only got meat in the store.
You did not buy any whiskey earlier that day?
I only got 20 cents worth of whiskey at 8:30 in the morning.
Oh, did you buy that from Mr. Glazer?
No, I bought it from Mrs. Gansey on the Valley Park.
Did you consume that whiskey before you visited your neighbors and then went to Glazer's establishment in the afternoon?
Yes, Mother and I drank it.
Oh, did you quarrel with your mother before you went to the grocery?
Mother and I did have a disagreement about how much money to spend on supper.
Oh, well, during that disagreement, did you assault your mother?
No, I never hurt her.
Oh, never? Well, your neighbors have testified that they saw you hurt your mother with sticks and stones and then chased you with a hatchet.
I did not do any of that. Isabel is a whiskey drinker. She might have thought she saw that when I was defending myself against my mother, who often struck me.
Your mother struck you?
Yes, she did.
To your knowledge, did anyone see your mother strike you?
I don't know.
Oh, did Isabel Weinsteiger ever strike you?
Yes, she did. But I was not really injured.
And you never struck your mother?
In all my life, I never struck my mother.
Really? Then why did a constable arrest you in August for assaulting your mother?
The most I ever did was to slap her once.
Did you slap her hard enough to make her fall?
Your Honor, the prosecution is badgering the defendant.
Your Honor.
These questions have been asked and answered.
It's been the experience of our police captain that repeated interrogation sometimes elicits different answers. I'm simply trying to elicit the truth, not as Mrs. Knight says, but as the truth actually is.
That may seem reasonable, but the courtroom is not the same as an interrogation room, Mr. Cooper. Please move along your line of questioning.
I will, Your Honor. It is the impression of many, Mrs. Knight, that you murdered your mother. Is that true?
I did not.
No, you did not. Do you know that you're lying, Mrs. Knight? Do you know that you lied to the neighbors? You lied to the police, and now you're lying to the jury and the whole world?
I did not do that. I did not do that.
You are a liar, Your Honor. Very well. You mentioned that your mother, often struck you.
Yes, she did.
Did she strike you the night before when you quarreled over laundry money?
Yes, she did hit me that night with a stick.
Did she hit you with this bloody stick, Mrs. Knight?
No. Yes. I'm not sure.
Before her death, how long did you live with your mother?
About 4 weeks.
And where did you live before that?
I lived at 2124 East First Street.
I see. And who did you live with?
My husband and his 3 children.
Why did you leave your husband and children?
Charlie and I did not always get along, especially when he had been drinking.
I see. So you abandoned your husband and the children.
No, I just thought it would be better if I lived with my mother.
With the result that your mother's now buried in Woodland Cemetery.
Oh, objection, Your Honor.
I withdraw the question.
The statement will be struck from the record.
Redirect, Your Honor.
Proceed, Mr. Sprigg.
Mary, did you love your mother?
Yes, I did.
Did you kill your mother?
No, I did not.
Thank you. That would be all. Your Honor, I rest my case.
Thank you, Mr. Sprigg. You may begin your closing arguments, Mr. Cooper.
Thank you, Your Your Honor, it is the proposition of the state that the defendant never intended to kill her mother. But on many occasions, the daughter's desire to drink whiskey, a substance that just temporarily drowned her despair, induced her to part with her mother. We've heard testimony from Mrs. Burgunder that the subject of these arguments was the family's lack of money and the defendant's desire to use the better part of that capital to wash away her misery. Over time, it became more and more difficult for the mother and the daughter to resist the temptation to turn angry words into violent actions. Finally, in a fit of rage and the drunken stupor brought on by buckets of whiskey, the defendant fought with her mother one last time. Did the two wrangle with his broom handle and a stick pulled from some part of a window? Did one attack the other with a stick and the other one defended herself? We don't know for sure, but we do know that the defendant, who was both younger and physically stronger, accelerated his action. She lifted a sharp, heavy piece of iron and raised it over the head of a feeble old woman and brought it down, crushing her skull and causing her lifeblood to spill out onto the floor. Again, the daughter did not mean to kill her mother. That fact supplements all the other truths in her mind. Hours of interrogation could not bring her will. More hours of hearing testimony from the neighbors could not take her away from that falsehood that she did not kill her mother. So misguided is she in this belief, in this core lie of hers, that she has convinced herself that it was the mother who attacked her, when the opposite situation was true, and it was witnessed by all the neighbors on all sides of the house. No, Mrs. Harper did not kill herself. Not by accident or by design. She didn't have the strength or the power to hit herself in the back of the head. And, very importantly, no other vagrant broke into this hovel of a home to steal the paltry possessions found in it. No other visitor with murderous intent was seen entering that home. No, the defendant did not plan a murder with malice aforethought, but she did kill her mother, Catherine Harper. For this crime, you must find her guilty of manslaughter and give her a sentence severe enough to pay a debt that can never really be paid for in this life. Keep this woman away from whiskey and away from passion and accidents. Give her the maximum sentence of 20 years in the penitentiary.
Gentlemen, you can see the effects of an early education and good breeding in Mary Knight's calm and dignified manner in this courtroom today. Look at her. She does not appear to be the self-indulgent and ungrateful daughter that Dayton editors created to sell newspapers, and that the prosecution promoted to win a victory for the state. She does appear to be the very person that she is. A sad woman who has lost her entire family, and now she faces the loss of her freedom. The prosecution earlier claimed that she clung to her threadbare story. Why should she not cling to that story? What is threadbare? Her clothing, her possessions, her home. Her pride has not been worn down. Her dignity has not lost its flush. Her intelligence maintains its sheen. Her story is made of a rugged and substantial fabric. Mary Knight knows enough to be honest, no matter how many times Police Chief Farrell and District Attorney Cooler call her a liar. What she clings to is the truth of her innocence. Now, another, different kind of truth has become clear today in this court. And that is that the crime scene, if indeed it is a crime scene, quickly became crowded with not so well-intentioned neighbors long before the police even arrived. And it is clear today from their collective testimony that that intention was to rid the neighborhood of an undesirable element. Now, it is true, there were some who did try to help this struggling mother and daughter, but most of that help came clothed in robes of accusation and criticism. If such robes were the only alternatives, who among us would not prefer to wear threadbare garments? Gentlemen, do not take away this poor woman's chance to reclaim her social status and to live out her remaining years with whatever happiness she can muster. She is now sober and has been for 3 months, 90 days, and she will remain that way. She's not insane and therefore does not belong in a wretched institution for 20, for 10, no, not even for 1 year. There is nothing but circumstantial evidence that Mary Knight harmed her mother on October 10th. What an injustice it would be to the memory of Mrs. Arnold if her life were taken through a robbery or a tragic accident, and along with her loss of life came the loss of her daughter's freedom. Do not find Mary Knight guilty of manslaughter. Instead, release her. She may start her life anew.
Now, Mr. Sprigg has painted you a portrait. A portrait of a modest and honest woman who has lost her family but not her dignity. The opposite is true. She lost her husband because she lost her dignity to whiskey. And to abate that loss, she invited her mother to join her in the debauchery of alcohol. This perpetuated the final tragic act of killing her mother, all because she drank her dignity down the drain. Gentlemen, it should now be clear to you that Mary Knight left her mother's house in the morning of October 10th to imbibe in liquor. She then quarreled with her mother and accidentally killed her during a vicious attack. The horror led the defendant to purchase more whiskey in the afternoon at Mr. Glazer's saloon, and she then used her native intelligence and nerves, calmed by alcohol, to concoct a plan for someone else to discover the body while she remained the grieving daughter. As I said before, no one else had the means, the motive, or the opportunity. Do not believe performance of this consummate actress. She may be bereaved, she may be brokenhearted, she may feel even somewhat insane by the horrid circumstances, and for coming up with several variations on why the blood ended up on her and no one else. But gentlemen, she is not innocent. Mary Knight committed matricide.
Gentlemen, as jurors, you must understand that the indictment charges Mary Knight with manslaughter, which is defined as the unlawful killing of another without malice. The term malice does not necessarily mean ill will or hatred towards the victim. It is doing a wrongful act intentionally and without just cause. Since the prosecution has put forth manslaughter as the charge rather than murder, and the grand jury indicted the defendant on that charge, it is assumed that the defendant did not intend to kill the victim. To find the defendant guilty of manslaughter, you must be convinced that she did kill the victim, and she did this action without the just cause of self-defense. As there is no direct evidence, you will base your determination on the indirect evidence presented at this trial. I remind you that direct evidence is rare, and indirect or circumstantial evidence is often credible enough to support a guilty verdict. However, if the evidence leaves doubt in your mind that the defendant committed an action resulting in the death of Mrs. Hart, then you must acquit. Remember, your doubt must be based on reason and not on emotion. Although this is not a common request, today the court is seeking your recommendation of a sentence if you find the defendant guilty. Under Section 6811 of the Ohio Revised Statutes, the sentence for manslaughter is 1 to 20 years in the penitentiary. You must follow that statute for a sentence recommendation should your verdict be guilty. These instructions are written on the cards provided to you by Bailiff Bose, which also contains information on the process of deliberation. After he has secured the defendant, the bailiff will take you to another room to deliberate, and when you return, you must announce your unanimous verdict. Court is in recess.
All rise. You may be seated. During the jury deliberation while court is in recess, the spectators are welcome to take a short break. At which time, when the jury has reached a decision, I will signal you for you to return to the courtroom. In the meantime, will the jury please follow me?
went to the hut stay. What's all this nonsense I hear about?
Please take your seats. And the jury has...
Was soll das Ganze reden über einen Geist? That was my first line of defense. Didn't say anything. It was right. The only one who still remembers. Scott. Yeah. Oh.
All rise. You may be seated.
Gentlemen, have you reached a verdict?
We have.
Pass it up then. The defendant will rise. Will the foreman please read the verdict?
We, the jury, upon the issues found in this case, do find the defendant, Mary Knight, not guilty.
Mrs. Knight, you have been found not guilty and will be released from all charges. When court is dismissed, you are free to leave the courtroom. It would be best for all concerned if you did not return to your habit of drinking alcohol. I suggest that you find legitimate and moral employment suitable for a woman from which you can derive a living and behave as an upright citizen. Gentlemen, thank you for your service on the jury. When bail of Close dismisses you, your duty is complete. Court is adjourned.
All rise. Please be seated.
I'm glad for this result, Mary.
I have faith that God will bring the truth to light and free me from this dreadful accusation.
Mr. Farrell, I'll meet with you next week to discuss the estate.
I'll escort you to the jail. Let's try to quickly wheel up the prostitutes.
I'll be seeing you again soon, Counselor.
It's always a pleasure, Mr. Spring. Perhaps with a less sympathetic defendant, we see a very different verdict.
That's true. Try out.
Sounds good. Have you ever TGIFs?
Ladies and gentlemen, I have 3 announcements. Before we finish, I would like to thank our jury for such a wonderful job. Second, I would like to thank our sponsors for this evening, Mary's Bordello on Brown Street and McDonald's.
Good Lord, you really are.
Well, our jury has made their decisions, and now it is a chance for you folks in the gallery here to answer your opinion on what type of conviction Mary should have received. How many of you would have voted for her to be innocent? By a show of hands, how many would have gone the opposite way with guilty? See, does anyone care to reflect on their decisions as to why they? Very well, maybe one of you in the jury would be.
I would agree with her foreman. I think she's guilty because
true actions of the judge. And oh, by the way, the jury only had about 10 minutes to make their decision. Whereas the actual jury back in 1895 took about 30 to 45 minutes. They came up with the guilty verdict of manslaughter, and the judge, we gave you the opportunity to come up with a time period in which you would spend in prison. However, the judge, we did that to enhance your position and your role in tonight's performance. The judge actually gave her 1 year in the state penitentiary at hard labor. What do you think the verdict would have been if Mary had been a rich woman? Or if the defendant was a man? Would the verdict be different? You are welcome to stay with us and discuss this with members of the cast who are willing to talk with you later on. But until then, as my last duty as, I was going to say Sheriff Bose, of Bailiff Bose, clear the court. Clear the court out to the front steps so we can talk at the people walking by.